In this video, we are going to be discussing a commonly talked about subject today, and that is the role of the education system and schools within it. However, this video is going to specifically talk about the University of Nebraska-Kearney. And to start with, we will cover the topic of this video, the headline of this video, which relates to torture as a subject in school. On a exam that I had to take for a public speaking class, there was a question, number 10, on the third exam I had to take, which stated, quote, "To persuade my audience that torture is morally justifiable in cases in which lives are at stake is a specific purpose statement for a persuasive speech on a question of," and then it lists out some answers. Now, looking at that question and understanding that this is an exam for public speaking, one must wonder what a question like that is doing in a public speaking exam, because one, a public speaking teacher has no business arguing about the morals of torture. And then with the way that this statement is worded, now that we've established that this test has no business talking about the subject, well, this question is worded with the intent of essentially teaching that torture is morally justifiable, which whether or not it is or isn't is not important for public speaking ability. And so it's no surprise that people coming out of school or colleges don't know how to speak properly in public, because when they go to a public speaking class, they're taught about the morally justifiable nature of torture. That's pretty ridiculous. So let's go ahead and look at who this test writer fantasizes about torturing. And that would be in question 4, where it states that Jen is listening to a speaker who says, "Now is the time to deride, to defeat, even destroy gender discrimination." What is this? Well, I can certainly answer that, and it's not listed among the answers on this test. That is an example of behavior or perception modification, shall we say, because that question insinuates the fact that gender discrimination is bad. And now, in this year 2023, we have come to understand what their definition of gender discrimination is, and that is anybody who disagrees with the ability to groom children for pedophiles, essentially. That is their definition of gender discrimination today. So naturally, the writer of this test would like to torture and destroy people who stand in the way of their woke type of progress. And this test goes further, of course, because in question 19, it states, "According to your textbook, the following statement is an example of what type of fallacy? Quote, if we allow the government to restrict the sale of semi-automatic weapons, before we know it, there will be a ban on ownership of handguns and even hunting rifles, and once our constitutional right to bear arms has been compromised, the right of free speech will be the next to go." Now, the obvious explanation for this question is that it is engaging in political rhetoric and teaching the obviously anti-gun side of the argument, because clearly the writer of this test does not agree with the Second Amendment. Of course, whether or not they agree with it is not withstanding, because it's law. It's the supreme law of the land. You can't argue with the law of the land. Well, I suppose you could, but it's a futile effort. Either way, it's very clear that the writer of this test is attempting to instigate behavior modification in a very insidious way, and they are clearly no lovers of the Constitution. Of course, it would required due process to convict and determine that these individuals are in fact violating the law. I cannot myself say whether or not they are, because that would not be due process. So in exam number 3, these questions were found, and this test I took at December 15th at 16:46 p.m. or 6:46 p.m. That's 18:46 p.m. And again, this exam is supposed to be for the skill of public speaking. Surprise, surprise, it does just about everything else besides actually teach about public speaking. Now, this puts into context a recent exchange I have had with a teacher for a so-called alleged, at least, teacher of management class. The email exchange that I began specifically, at least in this context, relates to a copyright clause that was written. And when we look at the wording in the copyright clause, we realize that what I did, where I copied these test questions and their content, well, they are attempting to enact a policy to stop that. Essentially, they do not want people copying and editing or copying and disseminating the activities going on at this institution. And with the context of the previous mentioned test exams, it's no surprise why. Now, first, to start out, I initiated this exchange by sending an email to the teacher and then CCing everyone that I have listed in my email exchange that responded to previous allegations of criminal conduct and misconduct and malfeasance and whatnot, which was referred to in a previous video titled "The Torch of Education." I stated, hello, quote, hello. First, my name is Stephen Coleman-Rausch, and I am a student in your management class for this semester. And I list the code. I wish to bring to your attention possible violations of the Board of Regents bylaws, Nebraska State Codes, U.S. Criminal Codes, and the U.S. Constitution, the, quote, Supreme Law of the Land, Article 6. Second, I do not know if these issues have been brought to your attention prior. In good faith, I will presume that they have not. However, upon establishment of state of mind, sometimes referred to as mens rea, and should these alleged violations continue to be engaged, I'll be compelled to forward this information onto the appropriate authorities. I am a veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps and swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, an oath which compels me to act on these alleged violations. Also, I have a fiduciary responsibility to do so, as I am attending studies under the Post-9/11 Chapter 33 Benefits Program. Therefore, nothing in this email should be construed as a personal attack, nor will I refrain from further dutiful action should this email go unheeded. The Board of Regents bylaws, you should be aware, lists how the university has indemnified itself of any malfeasance by faculty, essentially meaning that you will not be shielded by the university for such action. In Chapter 6, Section 8 of the Board of Regents bylaws, it states, the General Counsel for the university shall thereupon arrange for the legal defense of the requesting individual, unless, after investigation, it is found that the claim or demand does not arise out of an alleged act or omission occurring in the course and scope of duties, employment, or training of the requesting individual, or that the act or omission complained of amounts to malfeasance in office or of willful and wanton neglect of duty. In which case, General Counsel for the university shall give the requesting individual written notice that defense of the claim has been rejected by the university. 6.8 Board of Regents bylaws. As far as the alleged malfeasance in the context of the university bylaws, a number of statements in your course materials appear to violate Chapter 4, Section 1, subsection A, which states, A, to respect, 1, the dignity of others, 2, the right of others to express differing opinions, 3, the right of others to be free from fear, from violence, and from personal abuse, and 4, of the right of the university community to be free from actions that impede its normal functioning. Now, before we move on to the rest of my initiating email, it would be important to note that the willful language in this section of the bylaws specifically relates to mens rea, that is the state of mind. And that is the concept that one cannot commit a crime if they are not of the state of mind to be committing that crime. Essentially, if they don't know it's a crime, they're not committing a crime. But if they do know it's a crime, then they're willfully doing it and can be treated accordingly. And of course, what I am attempting to do mostly here is establish not only the concept of mens rea, but also conspiracy, which is a specific criminal code. There's a specific criminal code in the U.S. codes that relates to conspiracy, and I have listed it in the email. So, in continuation, U.S. criminal codes, which I allege to be violated, include Section 241 and 242 of Title 18, Crimes and Criminal Procedure, Part 1, Crimes, Chapter 13, Civil Rights. In Section 241, and here we get conspiracy against rights. It states, if two or more persons conspire to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district of the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him by the Constitution or laws of the United States, or because of his having exercised the same. And should individuals at this university allow this type of behavior to continue, this section might be violated. Next, in Section 242, Deprivation of Rights under the Color of Law, it states, whoever, under color of any law, statute, ordinance, regulation, or custom, willfully subjects any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district to the deprivation of any rights, privileges, or immunities secured or protected by the Constitution or laws of the United States, or to different punishments, pains, or penalties on account of such person being an alien, or by reason of his color or race, than are prescribed for the punishment of citizens shall be fined under this title, or prison not more than 1 year, or both. These criminal codes that I allege have been broken should be canons of the Constitution, which states in the Fifth Amendment, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. The copyright notice contained in the syllabus for the spring semester states, the materials used for this course are only for the use of students enrolled in this course, for purposes associated with this course, and may not be retained or disseminated. Which, of course, is exactly what I'm doing. This clause appears to be operating under the color of law and is disparaging students from engaging in a lawfully, constitutionally protecting right. That's a typo. I meant to say protected right. Nobody's perfect. Nebraska is a one-party recording state, and any student is perfectly within their rights to record materials, communications, and other such circumstances as they might personally be involved in, such as myself. Additionally, this statement could constitute a violation of fair use, which stipulated that material can be used in a format for comment, like when making a report on possible criminal conduct of university faculty, or presentation within material for a YouTube video, like this one. Also, this copyright notice stipulates the materials are protected by copyright, and any further use of this material is in violation of my course policies, and also likely in violation of federal copyright law. Such a clause could constitute coercive language operating under the color of law, as it does not relate to the alleged copyright law, and also, this clause elevates course policy as law. Any action taken on course policy, I allege, would violate the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, to which Section 242 of the Criminal Code is a specific canon. Apart from this, I find the overall tone and manner of course materials presented so far to be oppressive, demeaning, and highly unprofessional, possibly criminal, but due process must be served in that regard. And with this part, I don't believe much further comment is necessary because it's pretty self-explanatory. And finally, in the last paragraph, I said, the alleged contract of the syllabus is not only incorrect, but could also be a possible violation of previously addressed codes and the U.S. Constitution. Whereas the syllabus states, it is imperative that you develop a good understanding of the syllabus. Think of it as our contract. This syllabus is not a contract, nor does a contract form that basis of law. A contract is nothing more than an agreement between two parties and doesn't necessarily require any special procedure. However, contracts are specifically addressed under the U.S. Code and the U.S. Constitution, definitions which this syllabus would not fall under. Such language could constitute violations of contract laws as they relate to the U.S. Constitution, the supreme law of the land, Article 6. These are only some of the possible violations, and I have compiled a list. If you would like a presentation of this list so that you might rectify these issues, then I would be happy to provide it. However, if no action is taken to rectify these alleged allegations, among others, and this email is ignored, then I will be compelled to seek further action. And then I signed it and also stated, nothing in this email should be construed to prepare or otherwise or affect relevant regulations, orders, codes, laws, or customs which might be applicable, nor do the same with anything else that might be omitted. Very standard thing to add. Now, the list that I described in my email, it was not requested and I have not provided it. And I believe that the more important element to take away from this is, in fact, their alleged copyright clause, which is nothing more than an obvious attempt to gag students from talking about their apparently criminal activity, especially with regard to things like the aforementioned exam. And now, let's move on to his response, which is as we might expect. He said, "Hi, Stephen. I've received your email. Based on that, I am under the impression that part of my syllabus does not sit well with you." And here in this first sentence, he's attempting to shift liability and also make this a personal matter. So, I appreciate you bringing that concern up with me. This is the first time I've had a student accuse me of criminal conduct, refer to me as a domestic enemy, and threaten some kind of further action. And for context, first I would note that he is stating that I accused him of criminal conduct, which is partially true. However, I did not directly refer to him as a domestic enemy, so there he's misinterpreting my words. And I did not actually threaten any action. I simply stated that I would be compelled to act, which is not the same thing. And in continuation, he said, especially from just a syllabus. Just a syllabus. This really isn't a good foot for either of us to start on with this course, which doesn't officially start for another couple of weeks. Interesting. That aside, I am under the assumption that you have reached out in a good faith attempt to understand the intent of the statements you highlighted and to resolve any concerns you might have with the spring syllabus that I released early to all sections of MGT 301. Thanks for attaching it for our reference. Now, in this paragraph, as soon as overly worded phrases and statements come out, that should set off alarm bells because that means something is attempting to be codified in a way that it's hard to decipher. So let's look further at this particular very short paragraph. He is suggesting that I reached out in good faith, which is true. I did reach out in good faith, but I did not reach out in good faith in the way that he is saying, because he says I am reaching out in good faith in an attempt to understand the intent of the statements that I highlighted. First, I understood the statements that I highlighted, and I was specifically quoting those statements that I highlighted. And anybody can easily look through and see the way the words are put together signifies meaning. Although I suppose for an academician that likes to constantly change definitions of words, that meaning doesn't really mean anything. Just semantics, right? And then it's to resolve any concerns I might have. No, I do have concerns, and yes, I would like to resolve them, which it's clear that he does not want to, because he clearly does not see it as a concern. Now, he states what the intent behind the copyright notice is, which does not actually correlate to the wording. When he states, 1, the copyright notice that I've included in the syllabus is designed to prevent students from taking my original course materials, which I have been working on nonstop the past couple of weeks, and posting them online or through other methods without my permission. When this happens, I have to completely rework all my course content and/or file a DMCA takedown request with sites such as Course Hero or Chegg to let them know that it was posted without my permission. You probably noticed that I also linked to UNK's Academic Integrity webpage and also provided other links to Purdue's Guide on Academic Integrity with specific example scenarios. These are all designed to help educate students on common academic issues related to plagiarism and the like we typically face as instructors. Okay, the entire purpose of this paragraph is entirely to shift liability away from him and the faculty and onto students, which is a very common tactic of these types of people. They are always attempting to shift liability back onto students because they see the students, exactly as I explained in previous videos, as opponents, because these people are willful of what they're doing. And so this is clearly an attempt to shift liability onto students in general and basically state that students generally are criminals, according to his guidelines at least, and engage in plagiarism. That's assuming criminal intent without evidence, which there's certain things that talk about that. Now, in the rest of his response, he stated, quote, "I don't care if you decide to make a YouTube video and post it online. I'm not claiming to own any such creation. Go for it. In other words, I do not care if you retain your own works and do whatever you want with them. I just don't want you republishing mine. Just like you probably want me taking your original works and republishing them without your permission." Now, that is perfectly reasonable. However, that is not in relation to the wording of the copyright notice. You see, I am an author, and what he's talking about routinely happens to me, where my works get taken and abused and misused, usually by companies, by the way, like Amazon or other ones I've listed in other sections. And it does appear they get away with it. However, most authors or most writers would put simply copyright, the date, and their name. All rights reserved. That is a standard copyright notice. It is not the copyright notice that is posted on the syllabus, which clearly from the context of this video is an intent to try and gag students from disseminating evidence of, well, the type of conduct that happens at this type of institution. And you only wonder what is happening at the other ones. And then finally, 3, he states, the syllabus states to think of this as our contract. In other words, treat this as our memorandum of understanding. Here's just restating the same thing. Obviously doesn't see a problem with pretending to be a contract. This isn't a contract law class. You can take business law to get more into the weeds of contracts if you want. When course policy issues arise or conflicts with students happen, which is rare, but sometimes happen, somehow I doubt that, but I'm required by the university to look back to the syllabus to see what policy has been put in place. I am required to maintain a syllabus. I am required to put my course policies in that syllabus. So here in the end of this contract, of this statement, he's actually doing something for us, and that is establishing conspiracy. Here he is stating basically that he's being directed to break the law. Now, I've notified him that these are possibly criminal violations and acts and whatnot, and that due process would have to be served, and that he can in fact rectify this by simply fixing it, and that I, of course, would be available to provide information and whatnot. He clearly has no respect for students, myself, or possibly even himself, but he definitely sees this as a joke. But he's also being put up to it and essentially set up as a scapegoat, which helps us clarify the conspiracy angle. Then finally, he stated, please let me know if this helps clarify any questions/concerns you might have. If you are still feeling uncomfortable with the format of this class, there is another 3-week section of MGT 301 that might be a better fit for you. The instructor covers the same types of content that I cover, but her approach is a little different. Perhaps that might be a better fit for what you are looking for in an online class. Let me know and I'll help see if I can get you into that class. And that basically is him stating that I should look for a class that doesn't break the law, which is true. And I would prefer to be in a class that doesn't do that and force me to do all this work, essentially. But that's not the course that has been chosen, and so this is what's happening, and we'll see how it plays out. Now, I did respond to that one because I felt it was fair, especially for a person of his caliber, to clarify a few things. And so what I said in my response, which is essentially a reiteration of the main points of the first, I stated, "Thank you. First, let me say that I appreciate your candor and prompt response. In addressing your comments and assertions, an attempt to make this a personal matter shifting liability back onto me will not ensure that this matter becomes settled. As I stated in my first email that nothing within contained should be construed as a personal attack. The lack of other students bringing this to your attention before, notwithstanding. A person once notified of possible criminal activity must rectify the behavior, otherwise they become willful and the concept of mens rea becomes established. There is no threat contained within the first paragraph. As I stated, if no action is taken to rectify these alleged violations, then I will be compelled to seek further action. Further action is described in the first paragraph as I will be compelled to forward this information on to the appropriate authorities. Of course, as far as the Constitution is concerned, the appropriate authorities is the jury from the district and location in which the crime took place. That is according to the Constitution, at least. But the military might not apply to that. Anyway, the fact that my words appear to have been misinterpreted does not change them, nor does the direction of possible criminal activity change the nature of such activity. The argument of simply following orders will not change the nature of a criminal or unlawful activity, action, or concept. In addition, it appears by the dismissive response that I have received in this email, this warning will go unheeded. No surprise. Therefore, I will add this situation to my previous reports on faculty misconduct and act accordingly. Thank you, as I am doing now. Finally, as noted earlier, I have compiled a list of further activity in this course, which appears as unlawful and criminal. This list was not requested, so I will not provide it at this time, but I will also add any evidence which was not pointed out to the list of allegations. Again, I will reiterate this is not a personal situation, and criminal activity is not something that I can simply look away from for personal comfort, or by simply switching to another class, since nothing in these emails should be construed as a personal attack. And then I signed it. And there we get at least the basic and most egregious idea of how these universities are specifically and practically carrying out the land-grant mission of military tactics and essentially, at the basis of it, conquest. Now, there's other evidence in other situations, but I feel that including those might simply taint the obvious impact of these other materials. Thank you. Now, if you have enjoyed this content, please like, share, and subscribe. And I will be publishing more videos of different topics and subjects, and some will be based out of evidence of current and real situations and circumstances that I experience. Thank you.